everyone, my name is Addie Knight, and today I'll be presenting to you an article titled Beyond Energy Balance, There is More to Obesity Than Kilocalories. We all know that obesity is defined by a BMI equal to or greater than 30 kilograms per meter squared. BMI started to increase in 1980 and it has continued its increase well into the 21st century. With BMI being high, a lot of diseases are brought about because of this, and such diseases include cancers, hypertension, diabetes, and others. We know that each of these disease states brings about other comorbidities and brings about other ailments due to these diseases. So, for example, type 2 diabetes might bring along with it vision impairment, lost limbs, hypertension. That's why we're really concerned about this topic, is that obesity needs to be prevented and controlled before people get into further disease states. We all know the law of thermodynamics, which states that there's this energy balance where calories in needs to be balanced with calories out. So thermodynamics, though it is very important in our profession, it does ignore a lot of potential causes of obesity, which would be epidemiological and environmental concerns like toxins, viruses, physical activity. We have hormone levels, medications. There's all these things that come into play when we're talking about obesity. So energy balance is the ideal, like I said, but are we ever at energy balance? One study asked this question, and they housed a group of men controlling their physical activity and food intake, and they found after many attempts that they could not get an energy balance under 50 calories per day. That 50 calories per day in these individuals could lead it was actually 50 to 150 calories per day, but this range could lead to a weight gain in a year of 5.5 to 16.5 pounds. So that's very significant when we're talking about weight and obesity. When it comes to checking weight and managing one's weight, there's several systems that work for people. One is a checks and balance system where you would eat more calories in one day and less in the next day, and in that you would ultimately be balanced out. Another system that works for some people is weighing oneself to see how your weight is per day and how it changes, and seeing if you should base your caloric intake off of that weight depending on its change. Another thing that works for people is restrained eating, so eating fewer calories or so forth. When we do look at thermodynamics, though, it's not merely about eating less, as I mentioned. There's other factors that come into play. The hormone leptin, that's one factor. It's genetic levels. Leptin controls satiety, so if you don't have a lot of this hormone, you might think that you're not full a lot. And this actually is a cause for obesity in many individuals where they're leptin deficient and they continue to eat because they think that they're hungry, but in reality, they just have a leptin deficiency. And in one study, actually, people with a leptin deficiency were given leptin, supplemented, and they returned to almost a normal weight, which is very significant. That's just one example of how genetics come into play, but there's others in regards to obesity. Environmental agents that I was discussing include food, pharmaceuticals, toxins, inactivity, and viruses, and they can all be controlled to reduce obesity. When we're starting with food, portion sizes have increased exceedingly in recent years. And when we're talking about portion sizes, many times they're written on the food label, but they're ignored because you're given a tiny bag of chips that says 2 serving sizes, but who's actually going to split up that bag of chips? Not many people do. Also, packaged foods sometimes have ineligible or illegible reading or on the food label, and that makes it difficult for the consumer because a lot of consumers don't even really understand the food label. High fructose corn syrup is another food concern. High fructose corn syrup came on the scene in about 1970, and that's ironic because in about 1980 is when we saw the huge increase in BMI. So is that the reason? We don't know, but it could be a contributing factor. In regards to high fructose corn syrup, however, there have been several studies to show that an increase in consumption of high fructose corn syrup sweetened beverages leads to an increased BMI. One study did look at a group, and they assessed that those who drank more of those beverages did have a higher BMI. Another study looked at two groups and assessed that one group was containing regular colas and another group artificially sweetened colas or beverages. And the group that was drinking artificially sweetened beverages lost weight, where the other group gained weight during the 10-week period of the study. Another study looked at just children, and they found that children who were advised to drink more water in place of their soda beverages, their weight increased more slowly than children who were not advised to drink water in place of their soda beverages. So all of this data is significant in weight management and in giving us an idea of what to tell the consumer in regards to high fructose corn syrup sweetened beverages. Future weight can actually be determined as little as infancy. Infants who are breastfed are generally lower weight when they grow up compared to children who are not breastfed. But on the other hand, breast milk has changed in consumption, and it has increased in omega-6 fatty acids. And this is important because omega-6 fatty acids, when the infant intakes it, actually increases fat cell proliferation, which is significant because could breast milk also be leading to an increase in obesity due to omega-6 fatty acids? And that would come from the mother's diet because there's an increase in our foods. So calcium has actually had an inverse relationship. So we're talking about so many things that have an effect on causing obesity, but calcium increase in the diet has actually proven to slow down the rates of obesity and actually have an inverse relationship with obesity, which is really significant. Low levels of physical activity, we do know sedentary lifestyles do cause a risk of mortality, and they also increase weight, obviously. Increasing physical activity will increase lifespan as well as decrease weight. There's many drugs and chemicals that can produce weight gain. Hormones and psychoactive drugs are examples of two types. Quitting smoking also has risk factor of increasing obesity, because once one quits smoking, it causes negative effects in body fat and can actually lead to a weight gain of about 8.8 to 11 pounds in a year, which is a significant amount of weight. Viruses have actually been looked at and inserted into mice to see if certain viruses can lead to obesity. One of these viruses did in fact lead to obesity when inserted into mice. There's many others that are being looked at, but that's significant to understand that viruses can have an effect on the neurosystem and then in turn lead to obesity. There's toxins in our food system that can also lead to obesity. Studies have shown that when MSG is consumed in the neonatal period, obesity can actually be increased. Also, there's many pesticides in our food system, like DDT. These are organochloride molecules, and these have been shown to alter the metabolic rate and in turn increase the rate of obesity. There's also many genetic factors that should be considered when we're talking about obesity. I did talk about leptin already, but there's also a melanocortin-4 receptor, which is an amino acid sequence, and it has been shown that when this sequence is deactivated, there has been an increase in levels of obesity. Further, ghrelin is another hormone that should be considered because ghrelin and leptin kind of go hand in hand, and leptin shows that you are full, but ghrelin increases hunger. So if you have increased ghrelin levels, you may continue to eat more, leading to obesity as well. The time that is in utero, the inauterine period, there's several factors that can lead to obesity when the infant is still in the mother. Some of those include starvation in utero that can lead to future weight gain. Gestational diabetes of the mother while the baby is in utero can lead to future weight gain in the infant. Gestational diabetes I mentioned. When the baby is small for their gestational age, this can lead to obesity later in life. And also when the mother has been smoking when the baby is in utero, this can lead to future obesity in the infant as well. As far as physiological control go, when looking at a respiratory quotient to measure macronutrients, it was shown that increased consumption of carbohydrates leads to weight gain. And also, ironically, it showed that underweight individuals who consumed high-fat meals broke down or oxidized fat a lot better than overweight individuals who consume these high-fat meals. So that's a very strong thing to consider, actually. And when you are looking at physical activity, too, physical activity is proven to be able to help metabolize fat stores. So if you're talking to your clients, it's an important thing to mention that physical activity can help metabolize fat, and thus they can lose weight that way as well. Cortisol is a hormone that increases fat cell growth, and in some may have higher levels of cortisol, leading to fat to be retained within the body. I mentioned ghrelin earlier. Neurotransmitters, too, play a role in weight maintenance. Actually, serotonin plays a role in food selection. There was a study also done on sleep in young men, and men who received 4 hours of sleep woke up the next day and chose foods that were not as good as the ones who received 10 hours of sleep, but the ones with 4 hours of sleep also had an increase in ghrelin levels and a decrease in leptin levels, which made them eat more and think that they were hungry more. Genetic factors do carry a strong weight in the development of obesity. There are many preventative strategies that we can do to go about mitigating obesity, and those include educating the consumer. Those include restriction in our food system. And those also include just modifying the food supply, honestly. So to educate, we can get into the schools, we can educate our children. Many children don't even really understand what's healthy or how to eat healthy. In regulating, we can say, for example, change a vending machine and make there be healthier options and remove high fructose corn syrup or soda and replace it with water. There's many things that we can do to alter the food system and try to make it a better environment for people to lose weight in. As far as policy changes go that I mentioned, modification of the food supply, there's a lot of policy that can be made, and that just starts with advocacy, and that requires dietetic professionals to be on their toes about new policy changes and to go to policymakers and to advocate on behalf of our profession and to try to make changes. There's many future directions in regards to this topic. That's, for one example, they're trying to make more environments walkable so that you are forced to walk to locations instead of driving. And that would be very significant in altering people's weight because the more we're physically active, we know that we will tend to lose weight. Also, food science and changing the food that's available, making there be healthier options, making our food that we do have maybe not contain high fructose corn syrup, maybe not contain these added chemicals and toxins and preservatives and MSG. It just starts at the core. But there's many things that we can do to mitigate obesity, and I hope that I've shown you that it's not about just cutting back calories, and that there's many environmental and epidemiological factors that come into play when we're talking about obesity. Thank you.